What's up, Clarity Coders and guests? It's been a while. I wanted to get back and share some application development videos and really give you some items that you can put on your resume and understand libraries, and I think that's going to help a lot of people get hired. So what we're going to do specifically today is work with Next.js, and we're going to use the new 13.4 app router that's now stable to set up an application, and you can see how quickly we can flesh out a front end and back end all in one application, all at one time. We're going to create this basic ticket app, and we're going to do all of your CRUD functions. So we're going to be able to create tickets, update tickets, delete tickets, and read tickets into our application. We're going to do this with as few libraries as possible, and I'm not going to do a lot of fluff in this project because I want you to see how we can quickly spin up this application, and then you can grow it over time. Let's not waste any more time and jump right in. I'm not going to set up a lot of stuff in this video. I'm going to assume you have Node.js installed, but if you don't, you're going to want to do that first. So you're going to search for Node.js, and you can download whatever the LTS version is right now. So go ahead and download that and install it. That's going to give you npm and npx that you can install your project with. I'm also going to use Visual Studio Code. You don't have to. You can use any text editor or IDE you want, but this has a lot of unique libraries and features that I'm going to showcase as well that make things really quick. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the integrated terminal as well. So I'm going to open up a new terminal window, and I'm going to actually create our project. You can see here that I'm using git bash. The bash shell, you can use whatever you want. Again, you don't have to follow but if you want to follow along and everything looked exact, that's the terminal that I'm using as well down here. So what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to wherever you want to create your folder. So I'm just going to do it on my desktop here. Create next app. We're going to use 13.4.13 because that's the version we're on right now. So if you want to follow along exactly, don't want any surprises, that's what I do. If you're relatively close in time to when this video is released to running this project, you can also do at latest, and that would probably be fine as well. I'm going to do this just so it's for sure going to look exactly and work exactly like we're showing you here in this video. Now you can title your app. You can't use capitals, and this is going to actually create a project folder wherever you are. So whatever we call this is going to create that folder on our desktop. So we can call it ticket app or whatever you want. Let's not use TypeScript, so make sure the blue is on no. We'll use ESLint. We'll use Tailwind CSS. We don't want the source directory. We want to use the app router, and we do not need to customize, so we're going to select no here, any import aliases. All right, awesome. So now it's created our app. So now we should have that folder on our desktop. So we can CD into that, or whatever terminal you're using, it might be different. So we'll CD into ticket app. Cool. Now our terminal is there, and we can actually open that folder in Visual Studio Code as well. So you can go File, and then Open Folder, and then navigate to that folder. Once you do that, you should have something like this. So this is going to be the basic of our project. Everything now is contained within this app folder here. Most of everything that we'll need. So we got our page, our layout, and our global CSS. We'll look at that in a minute. We are going to use Tailwind for this project. So you'll see we have a Tailwind configure that we're going to use. And of course, your package.json that you can see all the libraries that we're using as well. I want to run through really quickly the extensions I use with my project because I do use them and it does help a lot. So the extensions that we're going to use in this project, or that you can use to help, is this ES7 plus React Redux React Native snippets, and it's by DSZNAJDER. It has 9.2 million downloads. What this is going to allow us to do is create boilerplate code really quickly. I'll show you in a minute. So if you want, search for this extension in the marketplace and install it. Another one that we're going to use is ESLint. So if you search for that, it's by Microsoft. This is going to show us errors and linting in our project. You'll see how that works as well. Go ahead and install it. It's very helpful. Shows you problems before you know there's problems, that kind of thing. We're going to use Prettier. Now this is something that I don't know, maybe it's not the thing that I'm proudest of, but it formats your code automatically on save. It's so freaking handy. So go ahead and if you want to install Prettier as well, so you can get a little sloppy when you're writing your code, and then as soon as you hit Control S, it's going to save and format that code and make it look nice for you. So I use that as well. And the last one that I'm going to show that I use is Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. So this is Tailwind Labs, and it gives you snippets of code. But if you want to follow along exactly, go ahead and install that as well. With that being said, we should have all of our extensions installed. You can pause and do that if you would like. We can open up our global CSS, shrink this down a little. We're going to go ahead and delete everything out of here. But one thing first, if you're using Prettier, I want you to go ahead and hold Control and Shift, and then hit P or whatever, depending on your operating systems. And then we're going to search for preferences in the open settings UI. And from here, we can search for formatter. So you want to make sure a couple things are switched. You want to make sure your default formatter is Prettier. And you also want to make sure it's checked to format on save. That's going to give you the functionality that you'll see on mine in a minute, where when I hit Control S to save, it's going to automatically format my code. So let's go ahead and we can do a little bit of cleanup here. Actually, if you want to, we can open our terminal and actually run our project and see what it looks like. So in our terminal, we can open it up. Make sure you're in the folder. We can do npm run dev. Should give you a URL here. We can visit that. You can also just type this into your browser. We're going to localhost 3000. If you're on the default port and nothing else is running on it, that's what should show up. And here you can see our application has been created and it's running. We're going to chop this down and start a little fresher. So let's go ahead and cut out all of this in the global CSS. We can hit Control S to save. Let's go to our main page here. So this is kind of the first uniqueness of Next.js. So you'll see that we have a page.js. This is almost like an index.html in like old school HTML projects where it's the default page that gets displayed. So this is a page that's going to get displayed when we open up our app. Let's go ahead and cut this down a little bit. So everything inside the return, I'm going to delete. Now we just have this set up. Actually, we can delete everything if you want. And I'll show you how we use the other snippet library. So the cool ES7 snippet library for React, you can do RAFCE, and that's going to give you a default page. If you hit Control-Shift-L, we can edit all these at once, and we can call this our dashboard. Delete out that top React line. We can save this, and now we have our default dashboard set up. Now to make routing super quick and easy inside of Next.js, this app router, we can navigate by creating new folders. So let's create a new folder and we'll call it ticket page. And inside of here, we can create a new file. And let's call this page.jsx. We can rename this and make it .jsx as well. So here, let's do the same thing. Let's do RAFCE, Control-Shift-L. We can call this our ticket page. Delete out this top and we'll save. So now what Next.js 13.4 is going to do for us, it's going to create routing to this page automatically based on our folder structure. So you'll see that we called it ticket page here. So if we go to our application, you can see it's automatically updated. We got this plain Jane dashboard page now. We can actually navigate out of the box without any other code to that ticket page. And now you'll see we're on our ticket page we created. We can do something else as well. Let's create another folder. Now this is inside the ticket page folder. We're going to use square brackets and we're going to call this ID. So it's open square bracket, ID, close square bracket. Let's put this page inside that folder. So let's move that. So now it's inside that ID folder. So make sure it's set up like that. And now we can do something pretty cool here. So we can destructure params. And then we can use that variable, that ID variable that's going to be in our URL. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So we will, inside of here, we can do $, like that. Now this ticket page doesn't exist anymore because we moved that page. So let's do /, and then we can type in a fake ticket ID like this. And you'll see that it spits out that variable to us. We actually don't have to use the $. I don't know why. I was confusing myself. So we can do it just like that, and it'll spit out our variable. So this is pretty useful. We can grab off that with our pages. And this is going to allow us to create this app with basically one page here. So that's going to be our basic setup. So you might be asking yourself, what if I need a folder, but I don't want routing to be set up to it? Well, we're going to use that in this project as well. So if you right click on app and create a new folder, you're going to do open parenthesis and then create your folder name. So we'll call ours components. We're going to actually use this in the project, and hit enter. Now, because it's inside parentheses, it won't set up a router for this. So users, I mean, they can type in /components, but it won't navigate to anywhere. So we can right click on this, and then for example, inside of here, we can set up our navigation because that's going to go on every page. So we can create nav.jsx. And in here, we can do our normal RAFCE. And then we've created our nav page. And it's as simple as that. Now, this isn't going to be, no one's going to navigate to this or anything like this. This is just a component we're going to use in our project. That's the basic of the routing. We're also going to have an API folder that allows us to access our backend, but this will at least get us started here. So let's go ahead and jump into our layout page. Now this layout page is pretty straightforward. The only thing that's kind of unique about Next.js is you're going to be able, as you can see here, to use Google Fonts directly. So you'll see the default project already uses a Google font, sets it up here, and then passes it in. So that's all set up nicely for us. You can see there's some metadata that you can set up. So we can call this our ticket app and change it to generated by Clarity Coders. Something like that, and we got us all set up here. Now, if we want to pull something into this page, so if we want to pull a component in, it works exactly like you would think. So if, for example, we wanted to add our navigation to every page, right now it's displaying the children. So the children are going to be the pages that we're passing in. So if we wanted, for example, our navigation to show up on every page, we could do nav, and now using IntelliSense, you can tab here, and it's going to do the import for you. So I'm going to tab. You'll see nav gets imported above, and then we can do / and then close that. Now make sure you have the nav. If it didn't do it automatically, you got to type that in. Take a look. Now you can see our navigation is going to show up on every page of our project, which is what we would want. Now you can see our navigation there as well. So with that being said, let's start setting up the basics of the front end of our project. So we're going to get it kind of looking like what we want it to look like here. Now I said we're not going to use a lot of libraries, but I am going to kill that terminal, and we'll do just a couple library installs here. So we don't have to use images or anything like that in this project. We're going to use a free icon library. So let's do npm install. And let's do @fort, F-O-R-T, awesome /free-solid-svg-icons, space, and we're going to do one more. We're going to do @fort awesome /react-font awesome. Tell me in the comments, I don't know why it's Fort Awesome at the start of this instead of font. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's how it is. So type it in exactly as I have here, hit enter, and it will install those libraries. We'll wait for that to finish. There we go, nice and quick. And then we can finish up our layout page here and our navigation page. So one thing that's kind of neat about Tailwind CSS is we can set up our default colors in this Tailwind config.js. So let's go ahead and knock that out of the box here. And what this is going to allow us to do, it's going to use standardized color names that we can create. And then if we want to change things later in our project, we can change it in one spot and it'll push it throughout the project wherever we use that previous color. So right after background image, we can create a colors block here. And inside that, we can define colors however we want. So for our navigation, let's just call it nav. We're going to pass in a color. Now, I just checked out these colors and kind of made something that I thought looked sort of acceptable. I am not a designer by any means, so pick out any color you want. But this is the color that we're going to use for our navigation. Then let's do page. And we'll enter that as well to be 3441. This is going to be the background for our page. The background for our cards will be 47566A. We're going to create a card hover color. So this is just when you hover over that card itself, it's going to change to a little lighter shade. That's going to be 4F5E74. We're going to have our default text color for our entire project is going to be just an off-white. So it's going to be F1, F3, F5. Just a couple more here. Pretty simple project, so we don't have a whole lot. We're going to do a blue accent color. This is going to be the button on our form when we create a ticket. (0084D4). And then let's also do a blue accent hover color. This is going to be 009FFF. Save it. So now we got all of our colors set up for our whole project. So it's going to be nice in this Tailwind config file. I think that's everything we're going to use with this file as well. So let's go ahead and shut that down. And then inside our layout.js, we have a couple unique things that we have to do with this project for our icons that we're going to use. This is really quick, but essentially when you're loading in these icons, sometimes they show up really huge. So we got to change, and then they define back down. So it's kind of weird. It makes it look jumpy. So we're going to do a quick fix for that. So we're going to import config, and this is going to be from @FortAwesome/ and now we want to use the FortAwesome SVG core. So if you got it in IntelliSense, you can put it in there and that'll get you your config file. And then we also want to import @FortAwesome/ FontAwesome SVG core /styles.css. Now after this, we need to add one line, I think just one line, config.auto add CSS equals false. So now it's not going to sub in CSS automatically for us, and that's going to help with that jumping of the icon. So we shouldn't have to deal with that in our project. We're going to change our page setup just a little bit here so it defaults a little nicer when everything shows up. So we're going to keep the body tag there, but we're going to add another div. Now we want this navigation to span the entire top. It's like a top bar on a website. So we want it to span the entire top of this project. So using Tailwind, we can use class name and set it equal to, and then we can type our Tailwind commands directly in here. So we're going to use flex for the layout, and we're going to use flex column. So that's going to show everything on top of each other. So our navigation is going to be on top, and then our ticket page, so on and so forth. If you want a sidebar, you wouldn't use flex column. You'd leave that out. We're going to do H screen, which gives us the full width of the screen. And if you hover over this, or the full height of the viewport, so if you hover over this, you can see the exact CSS it's adding. And then we'll also make it a max screen. So we're going to give a max screen size of that full viewport as well. That should be it there. These are pretty simplistic. Again, I'm not a designer by any means. And I want to keep this as simple as possible. So let's surround the children with another div. So you can see here how I kind of have that set up. Let's add another class name here. We're going to use flex grow. This is going to expand the main page to fill up the whole page. We're going to do overflow y auto. And now we're going to set up the color of our page as well. Now, if you remember, we set up a variable called page, but with Tailwind CSS, we have to tell it what we want to use that color on first. We want to use it on the background. We're going to do BG dash. Now you can see all the default colors that show up, but we're going to use our custom one of BG page. And you can see our IntelliSense shows a nice preview of the color and everything like that. So that is going to be our background for our page, and we're going to use our text. So this is the color text, and now we can use anything we want here, but we want to use our default, and you can see IntelliSense popping up, default text. So this is going to be our default text color. Now we can save this, Control S, and we should be good. Now if we look at our project, well, we got to spin it up again. So npm run dev in your terminal. See, that's working. Let's refresh this. And cool, you can see our Tailwind CSS has worked. You can see our navigation is along the top. Now we haven't done anything with that. We'll do that next, but you can see it's at least in the right spot. You can see our dashboard below has the right page color on it. Making progress. So let's jump into our navigation and get that structured out as well. Let's go ahead and delete everything inside this return. We're going to use a nav tags like this. And then we're going to use a div inside of that. And then we're going to be 2 icons in here. And then we're going to do a second set of divs below. And this can just be our placeholder for a login system later. Now we're not going to do that in this project, but I have an advanced video that you can check out that will go over that as well, that I'll be releasing soon. This is not my email, so don't email it. I don't know who that is. So this will put a fake email, just a placeholder in our navigation. And over here is where we're going to want to use our links and our icons for our project. So here we can use the link that's built into Next.js. So you'll see here it says next/link. Let's go ahead and tab. And I'll add it up here. Make sure yours is using next/link. That'll give us links there. We have to add an href to this. So we'll add an href. This is where we're going to link. So this one can just go to our home page. So we'll just do /. And then inside of here, let's use one of our font awesome icons. So as we start typing, IntelliSense is going to help me out. Font awesome icon, and you can see it does the import up here. Make sure yours does that as well. And then we're going to add in a specific icon. Now you can search font awesome and you can find all the icons available to you. I've already found them just to move the project along. We're going to use FA ticket. So I'm going to tab here again, and IntelliSense will do the import for me above FA ticket. And we're going to give this a class name. And here we're wanting to define how our icons will show up, but we're going to use this over and over and over again, right, in our project. And I don't want to type this out every time. So we can create our own class name. So we'll call our class icon. And then we can reuse that in other spots. So we'll define that in our global CSS here in just a moment. Let's copy that entire section there, and we'll make a new one here. We'll call this our ticket page/new, lowercase. And I'll show you how that works in a minute. So here, we don't want the FA ticket icon. Let's do, yeah, we do. Let's use FA ticket here. Actually, for this one, let's use FA home. So now you can see you should have 2 imports. You should have an FA home and an FA ticket from Font Awesome. And you'll see that it's got everything set up. That's good. But we haven't defined this icon class yet. So let's go to global CSS. And in here we can set up a lot of our basic rules. Now I'm not going to get into all these, but Tailwind is set up with base components and utilities, and things can overwrite other properties depending on which you're using. So for us, we're going to add to the layer components. And here we're going to define two classes to start out with. Let's define our icon first, and then we'll do add apply, and then we can add whatever we want to the icon class. So we want it to be a color of text default, and we want the text to be extra large. Now we're going to do another one here that we'll use later to define our button. So let's do dot button, and here we can do a hover of no underline. Actually, we want to do at apply. So one thing that's cool about Tailwind is we can define things, certain properties like this for certain tasks. So again, we only want it to remove no underline when people are hovering over it. So it makes sense to put that there. We want our background, so we're going to do BG-blue-accent. And we want the hover color, so let's do hover again to be BG-blue-accent-hover. So now we have no underline, our background color, our hover set up, that all looks good. We want to do tracking wider, and you can see what that does. So if you hover over it, it's about letter spacing. This is the longest line, I think, just in terms of what we add to our CSS. So we're going to do W-full. We want the text to be centered. We want the text color to be the same as our nav bar. So we'll do text-nav. We'll do font-bold. We need a cursor that's a pointer. I'm going to use the IntelliSense. Let's make everything uppercase. We're going to do a padding on our x-axis of 4. So this is going to do padding left and right. And 4 is not 4 pixels. If you hover over it, it's actually 16 pixels. A py of 2. We'll do rounded. So this is our border radius is going to be rounded. We'll transition our colors. And one more here. We'll make sure it displays block. So that's it. I know I'm throwing just a lot of stuff at you right there, but basically we're just defining what our button will look like. You can use any CSS for any button that you would like, but we'll get that out of the way now since we're in this file. So we got our icon set up, we got our button set up. Make sure you save this, and then we can go back to nav. We're not going to use the button in the navigation, but it's ready for us now. So we got our icons. Everything looks good there. We go back, you'll see, yeah, that looks, you can start to see it there. It's the wrong colors, and the setup isn't great, but at least we're showing up. So let's add a tiny bit of structure here. So we'll say class name again. We're going to use flex. Now this time we don't want to use flex column, right? Because we want it, the icons and the email address horizontally spread on the page here. So we'll do justify between. That's going to space everything equally between. We want our background to be our navigation color, so we'll do BG-nav. And we want our padding to be 4. Again, I played around with these. You can, I'm certainly not a designer. You can use whatever you want there. Class name for our next div is going to be flex. We want our item centered. These are going to be our icons. And we want a space x4. Now what you'll see here is it's doing some mathematics to get our margins so they can be spaced equally between. So it just makes those icons look a little nicer. And I think that's the basics of what we need. So if we look back, everything looks pretty good, right? We got 2 buttons or 2 icons here. We got our email. This is kind of a placeholder right now. and then we can navigate around. So if we click on the new ticket, you'll see it pulls us to the new page, and you'll see that it's still pulling that ID down. Remember, this is the ID variable that we're passing to that page. Now, if we go home, we're back on our dashboard. And that's pretty much the entire setup of our application. It's pretty simplistic, so we're ready to rock and roll there. Awesome, we should be good. So we want to add a bunch of components here. So let's create a new file inside of components. And the first one we're going to create is our delete block.jsx. We can do our normal RAFCE. That'll give us our boilerplate. Cut that out. And now for our delete block, as you can see, we're just going to use like a red X. So we can go ahead and add that into our project just to get it set up and working. It's not going to do anything at the moment, so we will just create the icon. So let's do font. Awesome icon, like we did before. Hate how it did the import. I don't know why it did it like that. Let's do import. Font awesome icon. There, like that better. This will have to have a slash at the end. See, I just fall apart when my IntelliSense doesn't work. Let's do icon equals. Now, I already picked out an icon, so we're going to do FA capital X. So this is literally just the X that you see, the icon that you see. And then we can set up some class names here as well. So let's do text of red -400. This is going to be the color of the text itself. When we hover, I want the cursor to change to a pointer so it looks like it can be clicked on. And I want to set the hover color to be text-red-200. So this is just going to be a lighter version of that. And that's the basic of our delete block. Let's create a new component. And this is just so you can see how we can kind of put this all together. Let's call this ticketcard.jsx, RAFCE. See here we got our ticket card. Here we can start pulling in our different items. So for example, we can pull in our delete block here. You'll see it's importing our delete block, slash like that. You'll see now our ticket card shows up with the delete block. Now, if we go to our project, nothing's going to show up yet, right? Because we're not using that ticket card anywhere, and we're not using that delete block anywhere yet. So then back in our dashboard page here, here's where we can add in our ticket card. That's again a component that we're going to import. So you can see now we got our ticket card. So now if we go into our project, you'll see our ticket card is just a red X right now, but you'll see it does at least show up. So you can see how we're kind of using components to pull everything together here. Now, these are components because we want to be able to reuse them, right? Eventually in our project, we're going to have multiple ticket cards. Now, this obviously isn't going to look right at the moment, but you'll see we're able to reuse that code without retyping it or anything like that. All right, so the other parts of our ticket. So we have our delete block. We need our priority display. So let's create a new file. We'll call it priority. Spelling's tough for me sometimes. RAFCE. Get our boilerplate there. Now for this, it's kind of cool. We have the 5 like fire icons, and depending on how hot this project is, no pun intended, is how many are filled up with the project. So we're not going to set any of that up quite yet, but we do want to add in our icons. So let's add in 5 of those icons. Let's say font awesome icon. It imported better this time, so I like that. And for this, we're going to do a icon that equals FA fire. You'll see we did the auto import there as well. Let's get 5 of these. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now prettier, watch this magic, Control S, boom. We're getting somewhere. For our class name, oh, I should have done this first, huh? We can do text-red-400 just for now. So these are all going to be hot at the moment. We can copy that. Well, I should have done this first. Paste it below. Okay, cool. So we got our 5 icons here. Now, just a little bit of styling. We want these to show up horizontally. So we'll do flex. We'll put them all at the start. So we'll do justify start, and we want to align them to the baseline of whatever the container is. And then they'll all show up. That looks good. These are going to go in our ticket card as well. Now, these are not set up correctly, but we can at least throw it in here. So we'll do our priority display. Take a look at that. Look at that. Stuff is showing up in our ticket cards automatically. Okay, so let's go ahead and rifle through the rest of these. We got our priority display. We wanted a progress bar as well. REFCE. Delete this one out. This progress bar is pretty cool. We use 2 divs essentially to set up an outside div that's like the unfilled part of the bar, and then the inside div, which based on a percentage is going to fill up the progress bar that we see. So we'll use a class name for this top div. We'll say we want it to be width full, BG gray 200. That's going to be the background color. Rounded full. So this is the border radius. So it's going to give it that rounded look. We don't want round, we want rounded. This is just the height, so we're going to give it a height of 2.5. And then our internal bar. So this is going to be the internal bar that fills up. We can use BG blue 600 as our color. Again, you can play around with these. The same height of 2.5. And we want it to be rounded dash full. Now we're also going to use the style variable here. So we'll use style. And this is going to be to get our percentage to show up correctly. So we're going to do style equals. In double curly brackets, we're going to do a width of 75% right now. So we're just hard coding in these values. We're going to pass dynamic values in a minute, but this is, you can kind of do it however you like or however you like to set up projects, but I like to kind of get a look or feel without using the database data to make sure everything works, and then add the rest of that in as we progress. But this should be good here. Back in our ticket card, we can do progress display. Cool. This one probably won't show up right because, yeah, it's just going to fill up everything at the moment. We'll get that adjusted in a second. It would help if I spelled width right as well. Width of 75. So now you'll see it shows up okay. It's not formatted correctly, but you get the idea. Our next component, we need a status. So we want to do started, done, or not started. You can do whatever statuses you want as well. But inside here, we're going to do a status display, do .jsx. You know how to do this, REFCE. Let's use a span for this. So we're going to use span tags. And inside here, we're going to do some formatting to get kind of that rounded look. So we're going to use inline, block, rounded, full. You guys are probably going to be like, you round too many of your corners. I'm not a good designer, like I said. So if anyone wants to help me out, join the Discord and let me know. You'll help me style my next project. We'll do text extra small, font semi bold, text dash gray dash 700. And then we're going to hard code a color in here. So depending on the status, it's going to be colored different. But for right now, we can do the done color, which is going to be BG dash green dash 200. And then of course, we're actually gonna have the status in here. So something like that for now is fine because we're using the green color, but eventually this will be dynamic. Then in our ticket card, we can add in this status display as well. Awesome. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and maybe format up our ticket card a little bit so it looks a little more like our end project. So we are going to have an outside div around everything. So let's leave that and let's set up our class for this. So it's going to be flex. We're going to build it vertically. So I'm going to use flex column. The background color we're going to use, so BG card, we're going to do a hover on this because you can click on them of BG card dash hover. Remember we set that up before. We're going to do rounded of medium because you guys know I love rounding those corners. Shadow of large just to give it a little drop shadow. Padding of 3 and a margin of 2. Now on top, we have our priority display and our delete block. I just have these in the wrong order. Let's put our priority display on top. Now these are going to have a div that wraps around them. So let's put a div around the priority display and the delete block here. Let's add some classes to it. So they're going to be spread out along the top, as you can see here. We'll set up our class name. We'll set it equal to flex, margin bottom of 3, just to give it some spacing below. This is going to wrap around everything. Now we're going to use one more div around the delete block. This is going to slide it clear to the right. So let's wrap another div around the delete block. We can do a class name of ML-auto. So this is going to automatically give us the correct amount of margin on the left to slide it over, so we can slide it clear over to the right. We save this. You can see our bottom's still messed up, but our top is looking better. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to set the H4 tag, and this is going to be the ticket title. And below that we can do a horizontal row. Let's do a class name of HPX. Let's do a border of 0. Let's make the background our page. And a margin bottom of 2. Do slash and then close that. So these are the self-closing tags. Let's do a P here for our description of our ticket. Let's do a class name of white space dash free dash wrap. So what this is going to do is it's going to save the returns that we make in our ticket. So if we do like a paragraph and then a couple returns and then type some more in our ticket description, that's going to show up. Okay, so that's good enough for our ticket right now. If we look, we'll see, yep, we're getting closer. Now you might wonder, why does your H4 look exactly like the P tag? Well, remember we deleted out all of our styles, so those aren't styled at the moment. So if we wanted to fix that, we could go back into global CSS and we could set up some of those default styles. So the one thing we want to do here is we can create an @layer base. For our H1 comma, we'll do H2, H3, and H4. These are the ones that we're going to use in this project. We can do @apply font dash bold. So this is going to give every one of these bold font. And then for the individual sizes, we can do H1. We can do @apply X-4XL, for example. Let's copy that. We'll do H2, H3, and H4. We can do an H2, H3, H4. For this one, we can do 3XL, 2XL, and XL. Great. Now for our P tag, let's do @apply text-sm, and let's do text-default text. Make sure it's colored correctly as well. So now we should have everything done there. If we go back, you can see our ticket title is better, and our P tag is formatted as well. So that all looks fine. Now we can go back to our ticket card. Close out of some of these. I've gotten a little messy. Go back to our ticket card. Let's continue formatting this. So below our paragraph, this one you're going to have to trust me for the moment. We're going to do a flex-grow empty div. So what this is going to do is it's going to make sure that all the ticket cards are the same size regardless of how much font they have inside of them. Just a preference thing. If you don't like this, you can remove it, but I think it looks good with them all being the same size. We'll do another div here. Now this is going to wrap around our progress and our status display. So start the div there, end it here. Let's do class name. For this one, we want to do flex. Let's do a margin top of 2. That will look good. And then the progress display, we're going to put a div around that. Because we're also going to add the date time that the ticket was created. So let's say class name here. Let's do flex and flex column. Then inside here, again, all placeholder at the moment, but we're going to do a P tag of our date time, 08/31/23 at 10:43 p.m. That looks good. Let's get that formatted too while we're at it. This one's going to be on the left side. So let's do this of a text-XS. So a text of extra small and a margin Y of 1. That should be good. And then for our status display, this is the one we want to scoot over. So for our status display, let's give this a class name of margin left -auto, flex, items -end. Div. Okay. So now we should have a basic structure here. Cool. So you see we got our ticket, our progress bar, our status, our time. Everything is kind of looking good. The hover works. All that is fine. You'll notice though that the tickets are taking up the whole page. We want to get that fixed, but it looks okay for the moment. Let's jump back to our code. Our ticket card is looking good. Let's go back to our page. Now remember, this is going to be our main dashboard page of this project. So this is where all of our tickets are going to display. Let's do some basic styles in here. Inside of this div, let's do a class name of P-5. And this probably has the coolest part for me of Tailwind that you'll see here in a moment. And then we're going to use another div around the ticket. So we'll do div class name. Now we can do some styling here based on screen size. So that's what I was talking about. That's really cool. So on our smallest screen, we're going to have the tickets take up 100% of the space like they are now if you're on a phone or something like that. However, on this huge monitor that I have, I don't want it to show up like that. So I'm going to say if the screen is large, so at least a large screen, and you can see how this is defined, and you can actually change the definition as well, but we're going to use the default ones. So if we have a large screen, we're going to set it up with a grid, and we're going to do grid calls 2. So there's going to be 2 columns. However, if it's an extra large screen, we want to do grid calls -4. So if it's if it's a large screen, we're going to use 2 columns. If it's a big screen, we're going to use 4 columns. And again, this is, I mean, you can change that to be whatever you would like as well. So we're going to wrap this div around all of our cards. Let's actually create 4 cards since that's the largest that our screen will be. And you can see now it looks kind of nice, right? So now we have our 4 tickets spread out because we're on an extra large screen. Now, if I minimize this window or shrink it up, you can see right there that it auto adjusts. This is what like a phone would look like. And if I slowly drag over, you can see this is where it decides it's a large enough screen to have 2 tickets. And this is where it's large enough to have 4 tickets. Now, why did I have it jump from 2 to 4? Just preference. Again, you can make it 3 or whatever you wanted to do, but that's what I thought looked the best. So that's going to be our basic setup there. So now we have kind of the basic structure of our app. We have the routing set up, we have the tickets set up, we have our main display. The thing we want to do next is to start looking at setting up our database. So we're going to use MongoDB Atlas. This is a free to set up, so you shouldn't have any issues there. And I'm going to kind of walk you through that process as well if it's new to you. I'm also going to use Mongoose. So what Mongoose lets us do is in MongoDB, we don't define types like you do in a traditional relational database. So you don't say that the title has to be a string and that the priority is 1 through 5, like a number. You can't define things like that, but Mongoose allows us to have that data integrity. So I really like that as well. And it also actually kind of makes setting up and connecting to the database a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and kill our server. This is just so we don't forget here, or so I don't forget. Let's go ahead and add in those 2 packages. And this might be it for us too in terms of packages. So let's npm, let's do MongoDB, and then let's also do space Mongoose. You need to do npm install space, and then those 2 libraries. So this is going to give us the packages that we need here. That should be all set up. Now we can actually create our MongoDB. So you can search for MongoDB Atlas maybe. MongoDB Atlas, we'll click on that first link. Go ahead and sign in. Now I'm going to skip through this part, but you can sign in. You can use your Gmail, or you can create a new account, whatever you want to do. You can do it for free. So go ahead and sign in and sign up. Now once you've signed in, you'll accept the privacy policy or whatever you need to do there. It might ask you some questions. I'll buzz through that. When it gets to this screen, we can go ahead and fill this out because we are going to use it. So if you already have one set up, you can, we can even hit, I'll deploy my database later. So you should look at this screen no matter what. You might have came to that preview one, or if you already have signed up before, you might come to something that looks like this. But at any rate, we need to create a database cluster. So what we're going to use is the M0, which is the free version. You can see it's running on AWS. It has a name, everything like that. We can leave all that defaulted. Let's go ahead and hit create. We're going to need a username and password eventually. So you're going to want to set that up. I'm going to go ahead and change mine to admin. You can leave that password as it is as well. But we do want to save it. So let's go back in our code, and just as a placeholder for right here inside the ticket app itself, not inside the app folder, let's create, actually click anywhere in this blank space, a new file, and let's call it .env.local. This is a special file that Next.js is going to pull in for our environment variables. Now paste your password in there, and maybe paste your username as well above it as a placeholder for right now. So we'll go ahead and create that user. Where would you like to connect from? So you can add your current IP address here. It's already been added. We might actually do a change to this as well, just to eliminate any problems, but we can go ahead and finish and close for now. Then go to overview. That looks pretty good. If you want to open this wide open for right now, just so you don't have any problems, you can go to network access down here. Now, I don't recommend you do this for every project, but we can add another IP address and we can allow access from anywhere, confirm. So now we're going to have no problem connecting to it. Now click on database and we're going to go back here. It's probably still deploying our database at the moment. Once it's done, we don't want to add a tag. I'm just going to hit OK there. Once it's done, you'll see cluster 0. It has a little green thing next to it. You can think of a cluster as a collection of databases. We're not going to have multiple databases. We're just going to have this one. Then we can go to Browse Collections. Now here we can go to Add My Own Data. We can enter a database name, and then we can also add a collection name as well. So in ours, for example, we could call it Ticket DB. In our collection, let's call it Tickets, plural. Hit Create. So that should be good. Now we could add fake data here. We could go back and create it and kind of import it. What I'm going to do is we're going to leave this set up as is. We're going to go back and connect to our database and then create the model of our data. So what our data is going to look like. And then we'll just start adding data into this database and see if we can get that working. So let's go back to Overview here. Go to Connect. We're going to hit this top one, Node.js, Go, drivers. And then here you'll see our connect string here that we can steal. So let's copy that. Go back to our code. And in our code, let's actually create our connection variable. So let's go MongoDB _URI equals, and then we can paste in this little snippet here. Now, if you have a different username, you need to change this username. Mine was admin, so I'm not going to change mine. And then your password, obviously, you're going to use your password. I'm not going to leave mine running, so I'm going to delete that out. And then you can delete this stuff below. Let's also cut off this end here. So I'm just going to do to the slash, and I'm going to do ticket DB, or whatever you called your database. So again, you got to use your information here. But if we go back to collections, you can see what you called your database as well. So I called mine ticket DB. Awesome. Now for ours, it's relatively simple. We only have one model. We're just going to use a ticket for right now. So let's do a new folder. Let's put this in parentheses because we don't want to route to it or anything like that. And let's call it models. And inside here, we can create a new file. We can call it ticket.js. Do capital T, ticket.js. In this file, we need to import a couple libraries. So let's import Mongoose from Mongoose. Do comma, and then capital, this is important, capital SCHEMA for schema. This is going to give us Mongoose and the schema that we need. We're going to do mongoose.connect to connect to our database. We're going to use our variable that we just set up. So MongoDB _URI. Brain locked up, couldn't remember what I called the variable. So make sure this is the variable that we set up in the .env.local. We're going to get a .promise. We're going to use our global .promise here. And now we can define what a ticket is. So here we can create our ticket schema. And this is going to be what sets up our data integrity as well. We can count on a ticket being created a certain way. So it's going to have a title, which is a string. It's going to have a description, which is a string. It's going to have a category, which is a string. It's going to have a priority, which is going to be a number. It's going to have progress, which is a number. Status, which is a string. We might even want like an active flag, something like that. That's a Boolean. So like a true or false. That's later if we wanted to have like an archive functionality or whatever it might be. Now we're going to do comma, and we're also going to add timestamps true. So the timestamp's true. That's going to give us a created at and an updated at date. So it's just going to be helpful to our project to have that in it as well. So now that we have that, we can create a const ticket and set it equal to Mongoose dot models. Make sure that's plural dot ticket. Or so that's going to be if it exists already. So if it exists already, we're going to grab it, or we're going to create it if it doesn't exist. We'll do ticket schema like that. Export default ticket. That's it. Pretty easy. And that's all we need to do to get our database hooked up, connected, and all that jazz. Now we can go ahead and start creating our API. So as you might guess, we're going to use the app folder again. We're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it API. So this is going to be how our application is going to access our database. We're going to create a new file inside of this, and this is called route.js. Now the file name is important here. So we're defining this as route.js. So Next.js knows that it's a API call, so that we're going to reach out to our database. So in here we can define our functions just like we would with get, post, delete, whatever we might need. We are going to use our model. So let's do import ticket. Now look, it's models. It's going to import it from our folder, all that jazz. That looks good. And then this one's important because it's a little weird. Let's use next response and make sure this comes from next server. And now we can create our first function. So the first thing we want to do with our database in particular, we don't have any tickets in it. Typically you might fill it with dummy data or whatever you want to do. I'm just going to create something to help us add tickets, and then we can test it that way. So let's do export async function post. And let's pass in requests. So we're going to do it just like that. And in here, we can define our post requests. So posts are going to be how we create tickets. We can do all these inside of a try catch just to make sure we don't have an error. If we do have an error, let's go ahead and define that first. We can return that response. So let's return next response.json. Inside of here, we'll say we want to pass a message back. And that is error. And then we also want to pass back our error as well. We can do a comma after this curly bracket and pass a status code as well if we would like of 500 because it failed. Okay, so that's going to be our error. And this is actually, you'll see how super easy this is. So to create a ticket, we're going to get a request, and that request is going to have ticket data on it. So we're going to create a form that allows people to add data, and they're going to attach it to the request, and then we're going to pass it to the ticket. And we'll create that next so you'll be able to see it. So we're going to create a const for our body, and we're going to set it equal to, and we're going to await whatever was on request.json. So we're going to grab off the body data, and using that ticket data, this is the variable that we're going to call it. We'll call it form data. We haven't created it yet. We will. We'll call it form data. We'll assign it to ticket data, and then we're just going to create the ticket. So we're going to await ticket.create. This is a Mongoose function, and we're going to pass in our ticket data. And that's it. Then it will create the ticket for us. Now we also probably want to create a response as well. So we'll do return next response. The message that we want is no longer an error. So we want this to be ticket created. We can delete out this error, and we can pass a status back of 201, which I think is object created or successfully created or whatever. So this is all of our post function. Now again, we don't have any way in our UI and the user interface now to get that data and create the ticket, but this is the back end setup for it. So with that being said, let's go ahead and create our form that's going to allow us to create tickets. So let's open up components. Let's create a new file. And inside of here, we can do edit ticket form.jsx. Actually, we can simplify that. Let's just call it ticket form.jsx. RAFCE. We're going to do a couple imports in here, and I want to make sure we get them right. So let's go ahead and do those. Let's do import use router. Now this is the weird one. So if you do the default one, it's next router, and that's not what we want. So we want next/navigation. And then below that, we want to use import React use state from React. Now, one other thing that we want to do here, so we're going to, in these next projects, they're using server-side JavaScript by default, but sometimes we want to use the client-side JavaScript. So in this case, we want to use client-side JavaScript because we're going to use forms and have actions based on it and different things like this. So at the top, we have to explicitly state that we want to use the client JavaScript. So we're going to do that. So we're going to use client. Now for our ticket form, this is pretty simple. We're going to set up our ticket, and we need some default data out of the box. So our starting data for our ticket is going to be starting ticket data like this. We can set it equal to, let's give it a title of blank, a description of blank, a priority of blank. Oh, don't forget your colon there. A priority, not of blank, a priority of 1, a progress of 0, a status of not started, and a category, hardware problem. These are my categories, so you can do whatever you would like. So this is going to be our starting ticket data. And then we're going to use that to set our state. So this is going to be a state managed form. So every time they change something, we're going to update the state and keep track of that so we can pass that data eventually onto our API to create the ticket. So let's use const form data. Remember, that's a variable we used in the API eventually. And we'll call set form data. We'll set that equal to use state. And then we're going to pass in the default state, so the starting state here. And the starting state we defined above in the starting ticket data. This is going to give us the setup for our state out of the box. Now we want to return our form. So we're going to have a form here, something like that. We're going to have a div. Let's do some basic styling here. Let's do a class name of flex, justify center. I'll just center our form. And then inside of our form, we can start getting things set up. Let's have an H3, and this will just say create your ticket. This is also going to be our update ticket page eventually. So that's going to be dynamic here in a moment. But for right now, we'll leave it like that as our H3. We'll do our first label of title. And then let's do our first input box as well. And then we'll do some quick styling here. So let's do input. Let's do ID equals title. Name equals title. Type equals text. On change equals, we don't have this yet, curly brackets. Let's do handle change. Let's make this required. So required equals true. And the value equals form data dot title. Then we'll do slash self-closing here. Now you see that auto formatted everything for me. Nice and pretty. Now we don't have a handle change. That's an issue. Let's go ahead and set that up real quick. Let's define it up here. We'll do const handle change. It's going to get an event. We'll pass that in. We're going to get the value that we want to change from e.target.value, like that. And then we're going to get the name of what we want to update from e.target.name. Now we need to set our form data. Remember, we're going to use this state function that we defined. We do set form data. We're going to pass in our previous state. So we're going to first use everything from our previous state. Now make sure you spell this the same. I spelled it differently. We're going to use everything from the previous state, and then we're just going to overwrite the one thing that we wanted to change. So we're going to do name and set that equal to value. And I'm getting these from above here. Need another parenthesis here so it gets returned. And that means another parenthesis here. There we go. So this is going to update our state with our handle change. Let's go ahead and spin this application up again. We got some issues here, but we'll talk about it real quick. Should be easy to fix. Go back to our application. We can refresh it. Now remember, if we click on the new ticket, we're not loading in the form yet. So nothing happens when we navigate to here. We need to do that first. So on that ticket page, inside the ticket page folder, inside the square bracket ID, we have the ticket page. Right now we're returning this. Instead, let's import in our ticket form, like that. And now when we go to that page, you can see we have our nice ticket form here. Now it's not styled very well, but we can take care of that really quick too. So I got some very, very quick basic styling here. We're going to style our form. We're going to do @apply. Now, why am I doing it in global CSS? Well, if this is a real project, if this is something that you're going to grow, and we might even continue to grow on this channel, you want to be able to reuse this, right? So I want to set up the styling for our forms. So for the most part, if we want to do another form, it's ready to use out of the box. So labels will do margin top of 4. And then for our input, comma, select, comma, text area, we will do @apply, margin of 1, rounded, because you know I love those rounded corners, and a BG of card, padding of 1. That should be it. I don't want to get too crazy with the styling. You're probably going to make it your own anyway. So you see, we got a little nicer format there. I like that. Let's go back to our form. So now we're back on our ticket form page. I apologize for all the tabs open. This is actually how I code too, with all these tabs open. So go back to our ticket form. Let's get the rest of this fleshed out, and then we can start adding tickets to our database. So on our form, let's go ahead and add a few styles to this as well. Now, why aren't these in the global CSS? They could be. You know, they're kind of specific, so you might not use these on every form you use. So that's kind of where I draw that line, but it's totally up to you. These could go in the overall form as well. So we'll add a method as well. So we want to post our data, and then on submit, we want to create another function called handle submit. And we'll use that. Now, if we save this, it's going to freak out because we don't have that yet. So up here, we can do const handle submit equals something like that. This might be the farthest I've ever gotten coding without using a console.log, but we'll just have submitted for right now as we create our form out here. So we should be good. Everything should be created now. Let's copy all of this. So we're going to copy the label and the input, paste it below. Let's call this description. Description. Paste. Paste. That all looks good. The type is going to be different. Well, actually, the input is not an input. It's a text area that we're doing this time. So we don't need the type. We got the ID, the name, the on change. We're still saying it's required. The value is correct. We can make the rows however many we want. We can set rows equal to 5. That should be fine. Now let's take a quick peek at this just because now we have our form, the class flex and all that jazz. So now you can see it's starting to look a little nicer. So that's our description. Let's do our categories now. You can dynamically populate these eventually. You can hard code them. For right now, we're going to hard code our categories. We'll do another label. Inside of here, we can call this category. We're going to use a select. And inside that select, we're going to give it a name, which is category, a value, which is form data dot category, an on change of handle change. So we coded that up dynamically so we can use the same for everyone here. That's going to be our select. Now we just need our options. So for our option, we're going to have a value, which is equal to, now for example, what do we say our default was? Hardware problem. We can have a value of hardware problem. We can show hardware problem here. Now let's copy this. Let's just give another, maybe 3 categories. Do software problem. And let's do project. Make sure the value's changed as well. Sometimes these are different, so you might want something displayed differently to your user than the actual value, so that's why you have 2 options there. Look at this, you'll see our drop down is nice, that works. After this, let's do our label for our priority. We're going to do a div around all these so they show up in a horizontal line. We'll do input. We'll do an ID that equals priority 1. A name which equals priority. A type, which is radio. On change, which is handle change. A value, which in this case equals 1. Just save to that format. And then below the value, let's do checked equals. Let's look at our form data. So this is going to decide which one should be checked at the moment. So if our priority equals 1, so I'm using 2 equal signs here. I'm using 2 equal signs for a specific reason. I want it to not care about the type. So I want it to check it if 1 equals the number 1, and I also want it to check if 1 equals a string 1. So that's why I'm using 2 equal signs as opposed to 3 there. So that all looks good. And then we just need a label below that, and I'll show you why here in a minute, of 1. That all looks good. Let's copy that, paste it below. Now starting with this, we're going to go 2 for the value, 2 for the comparison, and 2 for the label. This will be our 3, 4, 5. Let's slide up. Here's the last 2. So here we're going to do our 1 is going to be changed to a 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, 5. Cool. Now we should have all of our priorities done. Let's go ahead, before we look at it, let's just do another one here. Let's do label for our progress. Now I did this progress bar because I wanted another type in here. I don't know if you'd use this in a ticket situation. I guess it could be kind of useful, but it allows us to show another thing here. So type equals range, ID equals progress, name equals progress, value equals form data dot progress. Let's do our min equals 0. Do our max equals 100. So it's going to be a progress bar from 1 to 100. I save this just so it'd format. Below max, we're going to do on change equals, you guessed it, handle change. That should be good. This might be our last one. Nope, we don't want to not status tags. Let's do label of status. And this is kind of like our other one. We're going to use a select box. Inside the select box, we have a name of status. We have a value equal to form data dot status. We have an on change, handle change. And then we have some options. So, first option has a value. We'll do not started. Now this is, we can do this as kind of an example of how this could be different, although not much different. So here we could do not started with capitals, and here lowercase, or whatever you might want to do. The second option, third option. This one we'll do started, started. This one, let's do done, done. That's our select box. And then finally, we are here. Let's do our input type equals submit. Class name. Now, luckily, we already typed all that, right? BTN. And the value equals, this will be dynamic in a little bit. So it can be update ticket, but for right now, create ticket. Okay, let's take a look at what we got. Cool. So depending on if you want this button wide or not, that could be different. But other than that, it looks pretty good. Make sure everything works. Looks like we can select stuff, change stuff, type. That looks great. If you wanted to change this button to look more like a smaller button, you could do like a max width of extra small or something. If you go here, now it's more like a button. Doesn't particularly matter to us, but if you wanted to change it. So what we're going to do next is we're going to actually hook this up, and then we will create our first ticket in the database. So let's see if we can get a ticket actually submitted. So let's scroll up. And we're going to edit our handle submit here. Let's go ahead and delete that out, the console.log. We're going to get an event, so we'll pass in E. We're going to prevent default. So the first thing we want to do is we want to prevent the form from doing its normal default behavior. So we don't want the page to refresh or anything like that. And then let's create a constant for our response. We'll set it to await fetch. We're going to go to our API, to the tickets folder. Oh, we didn't create a ticket folder. So our API, we should actually create a folder for that. Because eventually we're probably going to have more than just tickets in our applications. You're going to have users or whatever it might be. So let's create a tickets folder. Let's move this route inside of that folder. So go ahead and move it. Now we got a route inside of tickets. So we'll do await fetch tickets. This will be our URL that we're accessing for this post method. So we'll say our method is post. Our body, we need to pass the data to this post method. So we'll do stringify, and then we'll pass in our form data. We'll do content type of application/JSON. That looks good. All looks good there. We'll get to that error in just a second. Ignore that for the time being. We'll say if our response.OK is not true, so if there's some sort of an error, let's throw a new error. Let's just say failed to create ticket. Now after this, after we create a ticket, we probably want to route it back to the dashboard to our ticket set. So here is where we need to use this use router that we defined above. So let's create a router. So let's say const router equals use router. And then here, down below, so this is going to throw this error. If not, if it doesn't throw that error, then we want to use the router to refresh the page. And then we'll use router.push to push us back to the default page. So that all looks good. This handle submit now, because we're using an async function, because we're awaiting, we need to use the async above. Save that. That looks pretty good, I think. Let's go ahead and let's try and create our first ticket. Let's refresh this page just to make sure. And we'll say I dropped my PC. Please fix my PC. I dropped it today. I will be waiting your response. We'll say this is a hardware problem. Give it a priority of 2. Not started yet. Create that ticket. And it threw an error. Let's see if we have anything. Okay, one thing we can do Control-Shift-I. This will bring up our console here. Status of 404 not found API tickets. That's probably because of how we had it structured, and I kind of moved things around there. So inside of our API folder, there's tickets, then we have our route. the post route inside of it. Let's do a console.log here and see if that hits. We're inside the tickets folder. Go back to ticket form. Forgot a slash here. Let's add that slash back in. Leave everything the same. This import is now different because we moved that. So we need two dot slashes to go back up to directories. All this is because I didn't structure. Go back in our route. So for our route, we're going to add another dot slash. Cool. So that looks like it worked. It kicked us back to the main page, but you'll also notice that it didn't give us the updated ticket, which makes sense because we're displaying these default tickets. We're not actually displaying our live data. So if we go back here, we can see that we've actually successfully created a ticket. So that's cool. I dropped my PC, blah, blah, blah. Let's go back here. And actually in our route, I'm curious if I can replace this whole mess with @ and then app/models like that. That should take us to the base of the app. Let's try and create another ticket and just see if it works. I dropped the server. This is way worse. Please fix it now. This is also a huge problem. Let's make this a 5 and create the ticket. You'll see that worked as well. So that @ symbol did work for us. That'll probably clean it up. So if we move things around, it won't be an issue next time. And you'll see now we have 2 tickets. Awesome. So now we're creating tickets in our database. So we got the create function down of our database, but we're not showing those tickets. We're still showing the default tickets here. So let's go ahead. Let's create one more. Create a map of our whole network. We'll create something like this. We'll say it's going to take some time. We'll make this a project. We'll give it a priority of 2. We might already have something done, so we'll add a little progress and we'll say it started. Create the ticket. So now we should have 3 tickets, 2 different categories. Yep, and that's in our database as well, so that's all good to go. Now what I would like to do next is let's create a route to get all of our tickets, because right now we're showing default tickets, but we don't really want to show default tickets. We want to show our actual tickets that are stored in our database. So let's create a new async function for get. Now this is inside the tickets folder in our route folder. We can do a try catch for this as well. Our catch can be the same, so I'm going to copy that, paste it. So we got our catch. And then here to get the tickets, we're going to do const tickets equals await ticket dot find. We're just finding all of them. You could do some filtering here, you know, only find open tickets, only whatever, but we're not there yet, so we're going to keep this the same. And when we do that, we want to return a next response. Instead of this, we want to return our tickets, and we'll give a status of 200. That's it. Pretty simple. So now we should have a way to get our tickets into our project. And let's go to our main page. So inside the app, now this can get a little confusing because we have multiple pages, but inside the base level app where we're displaying our ticket cards, let's open that up. And the first thing I want to do is create a const to get, create a variable to get our tickets. This is going to be an async function because we got to wait for it. We don't need to pass anything to this one, right? Because we're just doing We're just trying to connect and grab out the tickets. This will be a good look. So let's create a const for our response equals await. Let's fetch our tickets. This time we're using the server. We're not using client side, so we have no use server up there. So we need the full URL, I believe. Do API. Make sure this is capitalized, tickets. So this should get our response. Do a comma. Inside here, we just want to mention that we don't want to store this data. So every time this runs, we want to check and see if there's new data inside of this. If there is, we want to return that response like that. And if not, we can console.log out our error. You can make this a little more descriptive. Failed to get tickets. That looks great. So now here inside of the dashboard, we need to actually use that new function. So let's destructure tickets from await get tickets. This dashboard needs to be an async function. We'll await get tickets. So now we should have our tickets. Now I want to map over and get all the unique categories we have. So I want to kind of separate out these tickets by category. So by software, by hardware, and by projects in our case. We don't have any software yet, I don't think, but we might in the future. So let's get all of our unique categories. Let's set that equal to an array. What we're going to do is we're going to destructure a new set. So what set's going to do is it's going to take all of our results and it's going to remove the duplicates essentially. So we're going to do tickets.map. We're going to destructure our category, singular. And then we're going to return each time that category. So all we're going to do is we're going to map over all the tickets, and every time we have an individual ticket in our list of tickets, we're going to grab out the category and we're going to return it. Then we're going to pass that to a set. So what that's going to do, it's going to remove the duplicates. So now inside of here, in our case, we should have hardware problem and project as our two unique categories. We shouldn't have software because we don't have any tickets yet that have software. So now inside of this, we can delete out all of our placeholder ticket cards. So inside here, let's do another div. And below this div, we're going to say if we have tickets, so if tickets is available, we want to take our unique categories and we want to map over those. For each unique category, now make sure this is singular, so unique category. We're going to get the unique category and we're going to get a category index. Every time we have that, we're going to create a function. And every time we have one, we're going to create a new div, opening and closing. And this div, we're just going to give it some space here. So margin bottom 4. And we also need to give it a key. So we're going to set the key equal to our category index here, just like that. So this is going to give us, whenever we're mapping over, we need to give it a unique key, a unique identifier. So that's why we're passing in that category index. And then inside of this, let's give an H2. And this is going to be simply our unique category. So it's going to give us a header of whatever category we're currently under. And then let's pull this out of here. Let's put it below that H2. So now we have our new ticket grid here. I'll save it just to format it a little bit for you guys. And now let's spit out our tickets. So with our tickets, we want to .filter. We're going to grab that one singular ticket, and we're going to say if the ticket.category equals the unique category we're currently on, not the unique categories, singular, so unique category. So if the current ticket matches the category header that we're displaying here, then we want it to show up, right? So if that's the case, we want to .map, and this is going to be our filtered ticket and our underscore index here. Now, what we can do, now once we get to this point, we know we have a ticket and we know it matches our current category. So now we can pass our ticket card like that. But we also need to pass some more information. Remember, our ticket cards are static right now. We're not passing in any actual data. So we want to give it an ID. And the ID is going to be underscore index. And the key is going to be underscore index. And we're also going to pass it the ticket information, which we'll call ticket. Pretty easy. So now we're passing all of our information into here. Now remember, this ticket's still going to be static because in our ticket card, we're not using this yet. But that's okay, we will be here shortly. So we can save that. And we don't want to pass ticket here, we want to use this filtered ticket. I could tell because it was grayed out. We want to get just our filtered ticket. That would have been a weird bug later. And you can see now, although the ticket information isn't correct, you can see it's updated to fall under hardware problem or project, and we have 3 tickets, which does match the amount we entered. So we're getting closer. So now we're actually passing this data to our ticket card. We need to update that ticket card to utilize that information instead. So if we go to our ticket card, now we're being passed a ticket to this. So we can destructure, you're going to use your curly braces here, and we're going to destructure that information. And then the first thing we want to do is priority display. So for priority display, we want to now pass in our priority that we want to use, and we want to use ticket.priority. So now inside of this priority display, we're going to utilize this new one instead of hard coding it. So what does that look like? If we open that up, and you can control click on this to open it up, or you can open it up over here. I'll control click. If you open this up, now inside of our priority display, we can destructure the priority that we were just passed in. Now with that priority, we can dynamically edit these so they're not always all red. We want to use that priority value. So if we want to do that, we can switch these to backticks. Let's switch these to backticks. And then I'm going to wrap it in curly braces. So now we can add variables inside of here. So the first thing I want to do is let's add some padding to the right of 1. And then we want it only to be red if it's a priority 1 ticket. So let's use these curly brackets. And we're going to say if our priority is greater than 0, if our priority is greater than 0, we want this ticket to be red. Otherwise, we want it to be some other color. So let's get this just so it's a little easier for you to understand here. Okay. So we got a conditional statement here. So if this is true, this first quotation mark is going to happen. So we want it to be red. If it's not true, then we want the text color to be slate 400. So this is just going to be like a gray. So hang with me here. This is a little bit different, but let's copy all this and let's replace all of these. So now if our priority is greater than 1, we want this one to be colored. If it's greater than 2, we want this one to be colored. 3 and 4, we want this one to be colored. So now we're using that priority information that we're passed in. And if you look at these, they all have 0 priority, which isn't great, right? That's not correct. Because we didn't save our ticket card. Let's save that. And now you can see it's dynamic. So this part should be updating. So we have a hardware problem. One has 5 stars and one has 2 stars. And if we go here, we have a hardware problem. One has 5 stars and the other has 2 stars. So that makes sense. Or 2 fires. Stars and my fires used. So the priority display should be hooked up. Let's go back to our card. Right here, we can go ahead and update our ticket header as well. So let's use curly brackets and do ticket.title. Here, we can do curly brackets, do ticket.description. Those should update now. See, now we're getting dynamic data here as well. Our statuses aren't correct. Our progress bar isn't correct. That's okay. We got to go back and create a delete block. You can't delete tickets right now. So we got our title. We got our description. For the time, this one's going to be a little unique. It's going to be a timestamp right now, but let's use curly brackets and let's do ticket dot. Look at our database. It's called created at. You could use the update as well, I guess. Created at. So that should show up now. You'll see we got this pretty timestamp. We'll deal with that in a moment. In our progress display, we want to pass in our progress. So that progress will be equal to ticket.progress. And our status is the same way. We want it to status equal ticket.status. So now these won't show up yet, obviously. We have to enter the actual data on the ticket. So let's open up progress display. Following the same format, we want to destructure our progress. And now instead of hard coding in 75 here, so instead of hard coding this in, we want to use backticks. And then we can do $sign and pass it whatever our progress variable is. We still need the % here. So that should be done. Go back to our ticket card, control click our status. So here, we want to use our status instead. So we're destructuring our status. And then here, instead of done, we want to be whatever our status is. Now, if we look at this, I remember only one had progress on it, so that looks like it's correct. And you'll see not started and started are both correct, so the statuses are correct. However, they're not the right color, so we got a little more work to do here. You can do this a bunch of different ways. Let's create a function. Let's say this is getColor. We're going to pass in the status. Set this equal to status. Like that. Again, we'll create a color, so we'll say let color equals, we can do BG slate 700 as our default. And then let's do a switch case. So we'll take our status and dot to lowercase. This is just to be careful in case we get past an uppercase status or something like that. Now here we can have a case if it's done. We want the color to equal bg-green-200, which is the color it's using right now. And let's go ahead and return that color. Then our case, if it is started. So we'll say that case is the color will equal bg-yellow-200. And then we'll return the color. Is that a colon there? Control S will get all formatted. You're noticing I'm getting sloppy because of this prettier. We'll say not started is our last status. The color will equal BG red 200 because we need to start that as soon as possible. We'll return the color. And if none of these execute, we can just return the original color that we set above. Oops, don't put that there. After your switch case. So one of these returns should hit in our case. If not, we just do the gray background default or whatever it is there. Now, if we slide over, now we don't want to hard code in this 200, right? So we want to utilize our function. So what we can do is change these to backticks, like so. Make sure you delete out the extra one. We can highlight all of this, put it inside curly brackets, like that. We want to delete out the background color of green. We don't want that anymore. We'll do $ curly brackets. So now we can inject a variable here. We can do get color. We can pass in our status. That should be it. So it should look something like this. Get color and status with it wrapped around like that. Let's see if it worked. And now we got our correct colors. We are making crazy progress here. So we got our priority. We got everything on the ticket formatted except the date time. I'll show you kind of a neat way to take care of that. So back in our ticket card, let's create a cute little function to format our timestamp. So let's say const format timestamp equals, we'll pass it a timestamp. Do something like that. So for this, we need to set some options of how we want it to look. So totally up to you, but let's do year of numeric. Let's do month of 2-digit. So we'll do a 2-digit month. Let's copy this. We'll do day, hour, and minute. So after month, let's do day, hour, and minute. And then let's also, after this, let's say hour 12 equals true. So this is going to give us the options of how we want our date to look. Again, obviously, you can do whatever you want. Let's set a const date equals new date, and let's pass in our timestamp. So now we have a date object that matches our timestamp that we set. And now let's format it. Formatted date equals date.to local string, like this. en.us, or whatever you want to format it to. Let's do comma, and then pass in our options. Now, the most important thing in any function, if you need data back, is returning the data. I don't know, should this not have 2 T's? Is that spelled right? Formatted? I don't think formatted has 2 T's. So we're returning that formatted date. So now instead of using this pure timestamp here, so we use this ticket created at, instead of that, we can call our formatted timestamp and pass in that timestamp. Now if we take a look at this, this looks much better. So now we have our tickets working. We have all the data showing up. We can create tickets. Now we need to be able to update and delete tickets as well. So that's what we're going to cover next. All right. So we still have 2 functions of our CRUD application that are not functioning yet. we need to create our delete function and our update function as well. Let's go ahead and tackle delete first. I think it's a bit easier. Let's go back to our code, into our API. Now this one's going to be unique. Inside of the API folder, let's right click on tickets and create a new folder. And for this one, we're going to use the square brackets and ID again. So what we're doing here is we're going to create an API that can access and delete a single ticket, or delete or update a single ticket. So we're going to use these square params again. And if we right click on that, we're going to create a new file and we're going to call it route.js. Again, the name is important there. So we have one route.js inside our ID folder, and we have one inside our tickets folder. Now the imports are pretty similar, so let's do import ticket from, we can use our @ symbol this time, app/models/ticket. That looks pretty good. And then we'll also import next response from next server. That looks good. This one's pretty simple, so it shouldn't take too much here. We're going to export async function delete. We're going to use request, and we're going to grab off the params. So we want to grab the parameters that we're passing in so we know which ticket to delete. We can do this inside of a try catch like we did with our others. If there's an error, we can just return that response like we did with the others. We can give a message of error, and we can also pass the error. We can also return a status of 500 or something like that. That can be our error block. For this, we want to grab off the ID from our params. Then we want to await ticket.find by ID and delete. And we want to pass the ID. Then if that's all executes, we can do next response again. We can copy this. For our message, we want ticket deleted. Don't need the error. We can give a status of 200. So this should be our delete function. Now we need to actually hook this up and make it function. So let's go back to our delete block here. And we're going to create a delete ticket function. It's going to be an async function, just like we did with our other ones. Inside here, we can do constant for our response. It'll equal await. Let's fetch. And then we'll pass our delete API URL. So it's localhost 3000 API/tickets, plural in our case, /, and then we want the ID. Now this is where you have to make sure your folder structure over here is okay and correct. We want this route inside of the square bracket ID. So then from here, we can pass in our ID value for whatever ticket we're working on. Now, it's also important for our delete block in general. We're going to now have to pass it an ID off of that as well. So we'll have to update that on our ticket card here in just a moment. So we got our response. Oops, I wasn't quite done there. Put a comma after this. Do our method is delete. And we'll say if our response is okay, we want to do router.refresh. This is going to be lowercase. And we got to create that variable just like we did with our other where we created a router. So we'll say const router equals use router. Now this is the one, again, you want to be careful. We want to import next navigation use router. So you can see my import is next navigation. Make sure that's the way on yours too, or else it won't function correctly. Now we need to call this function. So we'll say on click equals delete ticket. Bam, now this is functioning, but we're not at the moment passing in an ID, so we're gonna have to fix that. So let's go back to our ticket card. And inside the delete block, now we need to pass an ID, so we can say the ID equals our ticket dot underscore ID. So this is saved in underscore ID in MongoDB. Save that. Let's go back to our delete block. We have an error here. This is because we're trying to use an interactive component, so we need to use client-side JavaScript. So we need to explicitly say we want to use the client up here. To take care of our issue. That looks pretty good. So now if we go back to our application, and I've actually had this sitting for just a bit, so I'll hard refresh it just to make sure. So that looks good. We have our project and our 2 tickets. Let's delete the I dropped the server ticket. Can't resolve the tickets. Go back here. That was in the delete block, I believe. Oh wait, no, it was in the route here. Oh, silly me. I needed parentheses around this. My bad. Okay, so if we go back here, refresh this, make sure we're all up to date. We should be anyways. With that, we get another error. Router.refresh is not a function. Silly me. This use router should be a function. That should resolve our issue there. So now this might have executed because it hit that. So yeah, we did delete it and then it errored out afterwards. So we did delete that ticket. Let's delete the project one. And you'll see that works correctly. We refresh, we only have 1 ticket. Now, if we go to MongoDB, you'll see it reflects that in our database as well. We've successfully deleted those tickets. Awesome, so we should be good to go there. That is functioning correctly. Now we have just one more functional component to add to our CRUD here, and that's the update functionality. So we're gonna do this kind of uniquely. I only want 1 ticket page. So we're going to decide whether we need to update a ticket or create a new ticket based on the parameter we're passing in. If we go to our ticket card first, we want to add a link to this. So when we click on a ticket, we want it to take us to the update ticket page, right? So on our ticket card, we need to add a link here. So what we can do is we can wrap this whole section in a link tag. So let's start the link right above the H4. And then we'll do it right below the status display here. So there should be 1 div after the link tab. If we save this, it's gonna puke because it needs the href here. So we'll go ahead and set that up. So we'll say href equals curly brackets backticks because we're going to use some variables here. We want it to go to the ticket page. Now remember, we have to pass a parameter to go to the ticket page because it's in that ID. So in this case, we want it to give the ID of the ticket. And we want the style variable here as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to pass in to make sure it displays contents. So essentially this is going to allow our CSS to pretty much ignore this link tag, so it's not going to change the structure here. We're just adding in the link is all we're doing. And of course, we need to import this. So I'll use IntelliSense there. You can see it added my link from Next Link. That should be good. That should be working. So now if we go back to our application, we only have one card. We're running out here. You'll see I now have like the pointy arrow over the whole thing. If I click on it, I do go to the ticket app. So that is a positive. We go to the ticket app. We have the correct ticket ID, but obviously it doesn't look like we're updating it. It still has create your ticket, and we don't have any update functionality either. So when we click on this, remember we're going to the ticket page. So inside of our, close the components, inside of our ticket page folder, we have an ID folder and then the page here. And right now we're just rendering that ticket form. We're still going to pull off the params. We definitely need those now. And then inside of this, we're going to create a constant called edit mode. So this is going to tell us if we're editing a ticket or if it's a new ticket that we're trying to create. So remember, if it's a new ticket, the ID will equal new. Otherwise, it's going to be something else. So we can set up some conditionals here. So all this is doing, it's going to check our parameters to see if it equals new. If it does, update mode is false, and we know, or edit mode, I'm sorry. So we know that it's a new ticket. Otherwise, edit mode is true. And if we look at this, we can tell that, see, if we had ran this, edit mode would be true because this does not equal new. But if we use the new ticket button, you'll see on the same page we have a param of new. So that's going to be what drives whether this is updating a ticket or creating a new ticket. So let's go ahead and say if we have edit mode. So if we're editing a ticket, we need to get our update ticket data. We'll set a variable for that as well. So we'll say let data equal blank object like this. So then if it's edit mode, let's go ahead and create a function to get our ticket by ID. Now, technically, we could probably pass all the ticket data down from the function above, but I wanted to do this so we can show how to get a single ticket. We have a function where we're getting all the tickets. Let's create one to get a single ticket. So we're going to await that ticket data. Remember, this function doesn't exist yet. And then down here, we can just console.log out that updated ticket data for right now. We obviously don't have this function. And this needs to be async now. Then up here, we can do const get ticket by ID. This equals an async function. We'll pass in an ID. We can do our try catch. If there's an error, let's just console.log out that error for right now. We'll await our fetch. Let's use backticks again because we're going to pass in that variable. http://localhost:3000/API/tickets/$ID. This doesn't exist yet. Put a comma, curly brackets, and we want to not store this data. So we want to grab the data every time. Do no store. So that looks good. Let's do it this way, actually, instead of the try catch block. Let's say if the response isn't okay, then we want to throw a new error. Failed to get ticket. So we can actually kill this try catch. That, and we'll just throw a new error if we don't get it. Otherwise, we want to return our response.json like that. Okay, so now we have this all, but this API does not exist yet, so we need to create that. Don't worry, it's very easy. So we're inside the route.js, inside the square bracket ID folder, remember. That's very important. We're needing to use the ID again with this one. So on top here, let's create export async function get. We're going to get some requests. We're going to get params this time as well. Off of those params, we can grab our ID, very similar to what we did for the delete. We'll grab our params. We can get our found ticket data and set it equal to await ticket.find one, where the underscore ID is equal to the ID param we grabbed above. So it's going to find our specific ticket. And then we want to return next response.json. Let's return the found ticket. And let's also return a status of 200. I guess to stay consistent, we should put this in a try catch as well. Let's copy all this jazz. Put it inside of our try. And then our error is going to be the same. So let's copy that, paste that. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now we should be able to get our ticket data, and it should console.log it out. Now this is going to be on the server side. So it should go in our terminal inside Visual Studio Code, I think. Click on that. It goes to this page. That all looks good. And you'll see it does have our found ticket data. Now you'll also notice it's inside a found ticket variable here. So if we go back to our ticket page, so let's go back. Sorry guys, I need to start closing out of these more often. So on here, let's close out of our components, close out of our API for the moment. Our ticket page, we're going to the one in the underscore ID, so we're opening that up. You can see we're getting our ticket by ID. That worked. We console logged out this data here. Now it was in a found ticket variable there. So we can actually do, if we want to just do something like this, ticket data equals found ticket. That should work. Full dirty. So now this should have our ticket data that we can pass down to the ticket form. Otherwise, if it's not edit mode, so if we're not editing a ticket, we just want our update ticket data to have an underscore ID of new. And then either way, we're going to pass down the ticket data to our form. So now no matter what, we're passing it into our form. So now on our form, so open back up the components, open up your ticket form. We can do some cool conditional rendering, and we can either update or create a new ticket based on the ticket information that we're passed here. So here we have our starting ticket data, and below this we can update it if we're in edit mode. So we need to create that variable as well. So we can do something very similar to our other program. We can do edit mode equals ticket dot underscore ID equals new. This is false. Otherwise, it's true. We got to destructure our ticket here as well. So when it's passed in. So our edit mode now If the ticket ID equals new, then we know we're not editing a ticket. Otherwise, it's going to be true because we are editing our ticket. So now we have our starting ticket data. This is for a new ticket. So what we need to do is we need to check if we're in editing mode. If we are in edit mode, then we need to update all these values. So if we're in editing mode, our starting ticket data .title is going to equal ticket.title. We're going to have a few of these. So we'll have description, priority, progress, status, and category. So we'll do description, priority, progress, status, category. So now those should all work. And now we're making this change before we create the state. So the state should be updated if we're in edit mode here. So we got I dropped my PC. And then if we go here, you'll see that we are looking like we're editing this ticket. Now we don't have any functionality to actually edit the ticket yet. We don't have an update function, so we're going to do that next. But let's do some conditional rendering here to fix this so it looks like we're updating a ticket. So if we scroll down, we have this H3 that says create your ticket. Let's make this a bit more dynamic depending on if we're editing or creating a ticket. So let's put this inside curly brackets. This is eventually going to be a string to create your ticket. We'll put that inside of quotes. Now we need to do some conditional rendering. So the first thing we need to check is what is edit mode set at. So if edit mode is true, remember, we want to update your ticket. And then we'll do a colon there. And if it's false, we want create your ticket to show up. Now let's copy this. And we're going to do the same thing for our submit button, more or less. So submit, the value currently is create your ticket. We want to make that dynamic, and we'll say that's update ticket if it's true, or create ticket if it's false. So now if we go back to our project, you can see it's update your ticket, update ticket. So this looks a little better. And now we're showcasing that we're not just creating a ticket here, we're updating a ticket. If we go to a new ticket, so remember clicking on this goes to the new ticket. You can see we don't have an I_ID on your ticket. Go back here to our page. Let's do this. Let's console.log out our edit mode. And let's also do our update ticket data. See where we're messing this up. Update mode is false. Our _ID equals new. That did work now. Maybe it just hadn't updated yet. If I click on here, we got our update ticket. Go back here. Yeah, that's working now. Must have just not updated correctly. So we can delete this out. It is functioning. That looks good. So now let's go back to our ticket form. We need to change some things, right? So obviously, in our handle submit here, it gets a little more complicated now, right? We don't want to just post our new ticket every time. Because right now, even though we say update, it's not going to update the ticket. It's going to create a new ticket still. We need to fix that. So essentially, this first line is going to stay the same regardless. And we want to refresh and push our back to the dashboard regardless. So everything else will go inside an if statement. So if we're in edit mode, we want to do something else, right? We want to update our ticket. Else, we want to do all of this jazz. That's how it should look. Let's tuck everything inside this else statement for our creating of a new ticket. And then we just need to edit our new ticket. Actually, we can probably copy some of this. It's probably similar. Let's copy that. So now we'll just edit this first one to be our update. So for this, we're going to the tickets folder, but we're going one more directory because we have to pass in our ID. So we do $ like this, ticket._ID needs to be passed in. Now these need to be changed to backticks. So we can use that variable inside and then highlight all this and put it inside curly. No, we don't need to do that. Sorry. Nope, this should be good. So that looks good. And then instead of the post, we need to put. So we're going to update our data. Content type's the same. Our body can be the same with the form data being passed in. So that all looks pretty good, I think, actually. Simple. Failed to update ticket. How about that? Okay. Now back to our API inside the ID folder. Remember, we can't be on this base one. We need the one that's inside of the square bracket ID. Let's create our update function. I'm going to copy our delete, paste it below. I'm going to change this to put. We need our request. We need our params. We need our ID still. So that is good. But now we need to get our body data. So let's do const body equals await request.json and const ticket data. So we're going to pull it off of the body equals body.format data like that. That all looks good. Now let's go ahead and get our updated ticket or update our ticket. So let's do update ticket data equals await ticket dot find by ID and update. We're going to pass in the ID, which we grabbed off our params, remember? And we're going to destructure our ticket data, pass that in. That looks pretty good. For our success, we just want ticket updated. Then we'll send out our error. So that all looks great. Okay. A little scared to test it out, but we're good. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard. Do that. Did a hard refresh. Let's click our new button up here. So let's say creating a new ticket. Let's create a report database. This is a long-term project using a lot of resources. Good luck. Say this is a project. I just want to make sure the new ticket is still functioning. Let's make it a priority of 3 and maybe over 50%. We'll say it started. Let's create our ticket. You'll see that all looks good. That's all still functioning. But now I see this ticket is incorrect. It needs to be more important. Let's click on it. Now I can make it a priority 5. And let's add some more exclamation points. They were wrong. It's actually not started. And this progress should be 0. Update our ticket. Now it actually didn't update. So let's check that out. So our new ticket functionality still works, but our update did not work. Check it out inside of our, go back to our route. Let's try this too. Let's say before this return, if all this is successful, let's console.log out. They ran. We'll say our put ran. 5. So our put function is running. So this is probably something simple, but let's also check out our ticket data and make sure that's updating as well. Because maybe we're not passing it the right data. So on this one, click here. This one should have no period on the title and more exclamation points. Go back to our log and you'll see our ticket data is undefined. So that's our issue. When we're pulling it off the, and you'll see I did format data instead of form data. So now if we run this, this should show up as something instead of undefined, and that will help us trace back our error. This might work this time. Let's do 3 exclamation points, priority 5, progress 0, not started. That looks better. So now we're updating our ticket. 3 exclamation points, 5 fires, super hot project. And you'll see that we're good to go there. We can create another ticket just to make sure our stuff still works. So say we spilled pop on my laptop. Won't work now. No idea why. If you ever work tech support, this is kind of how these tickets go. So that's a hardware problem. We'll say it's 5, not started. Boom. Create ticket, goes in the correct category, looks good. That's a pretty good setup right here. We got our create, read, update, and delete all functioning. This is a great place to get to on this project. Now you know understand how to use the app router in Next.js 13.4. This is not a production ready application right now. We're sharing tickets with anybody who goes to it, and it's unprotected. We need to add authentication and a bunch of other stuff as well. If you'd like to see me continue and update this project, let me know in the comments. If you want instant access and questions and being able to suggest new projects and see updates to this code that you guys might fix in the future, visit the website and join. It's free. You get early access to videos, and this is the only way to request certain projects for me to do and showcase to you. If you don't mind and you've enjoyed this video so far, please hit that subscribe button. My daughters really want that silly little plaque for subscribers. So if we could get to 100,000 subscribers, that would be awesome. I'm going to continue making videos for you guys regardless. And until next time, keep coding.